So there are a lot of videos right now that are trying to waste your time hyping or trashing the unreleased iPhone 16 Pro. But this video isn't one of them. Instead, with just 1 month left before its release, let's skip all this bullshit and instead talk about 3 really important things. Number 1, what are the most trustworthy leaks for the iPhone 16 Pro and will the upgrade actually be worth it? Number 2, why these leaks could mean that the iPhone 16 Pro is the most boring launch in Apple's history. And number 3, 2 tricks that Apple could have up their sleeves to hopefully prove us all wrong. Because goddamn, we need this. And one of them I have never heard anyone talk about. So let's jump in. I'm gonna focus on the actually interesting things here. Instead of talking about the processor and the memory updates, because let's be honest, they upgrade them every year, let's talk about the most reliable hardware leaks, which at this point we can accept as truth. So both phones, the iPhone 16 Pro and the 16 Pro Max, are going to get slightly bigger displays. But I don't know about you, I'm not sure if I want larger screens and larger phones as a result. I already have the iPhone 15 Pro Max and I do love it, but do phones need to get even bigger? I guess we find out. Next up, both phones are going to get what is speculated to be called a capture button on the same side of the power button. This is rumored to work similarly to a traditional camera, as well as let you zoom by sliding your finger over it. But once again, I don't know about you, but I don't usually hold my phone like this when I take photos or videos. I think our age group and younger, they usually hold their phone like this, not like this. But I do understand why Apple is doing this. It is of course because Apple Vision Pro and creating what Apple calls spatial content, so 3-dimensional photos and videos for their flagship virtual reality device. And that only works when you hold your phone like this because of the alignment of the cameras. And then both phones will get major camera upgrades, but only for the ultra wide angle, which will make a 4x jump from 12 to 48 megapixels. And that should drastically improve the quality, but once again, mostly for spatial video, which needs both of these horizontally aligned cameras to create the highest quality possible, and both of these sensors are now very high quality. The main camera sensor is also supposed to get an upgrade, but it looks like a fairly small one, and it's unfortunately only coming to the iPhone 16 Pro Max. And that's a bummer if you don't go big, but at least the iPhone 16 Pro will get the same 5x zoom this year, which the iPhone 15 Pro Max received last year. And both phones will also be expected to get slightly better battery life, with the iPhone 16 Pro battery life expected to gain about 9%, while the 16 Pro Max gets about 5%. How much of an impact this will make in everyday life remains to be seen, but more is always better. The colors are also expected to stay the same, except for the one and only rumored rose gold. And I only include it because it might not happen, because if it is true, this will be my color of choice. I love rose gold iPhones and it's a bummer that they don't happen anymore, but if they are back, I'll upgrade. So is this next version worth the upgrade based on the hardware alone then? No. Absolutely not. At least not based on what we know right now. And that, unfortunately, is exactly where Apple's problems begin. Because in June of this year, during Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference, they announced something that blew everyone's mind. Apple Intelligence, or as Apple called it,
AI for the rest of us.
This, based on what they promised at the time, would literally change the world and the way that we use our Apple devices in everyday life. It would, without a doubt, make Apple products the most desirable ecosystem in the world. Because you would be able to answer a text with AI, rewrite emails from harsh to friendly, get summary notifications for group chats, create custom emojis and images, and even interact with ChatGPT, all with natural language, with the long-awaited and long overdue Siri 2.0. And I remember watching the keynote and thinking, yeah, Apple still got it, because I get excited when I see groundbreaking tech, Apple or not. And when I watched this, I knew Apple did something that would just change everything. But unfortunately, it looks like Apple may have overpromised a little bit, because most, if not all of the features previewed at that conference are not actually ready. And this is a huge setback for Apple, because clearly the software features are such a large part of the appeal of the iPhone 16 Pro lineup. And with them not ready, people don't really have a reason to upgrade. And it is now known that Apple Intelligence will indeed only be available with a later update in iOS 18.1, which usually, and if history is any indication, is expected 4 to 6 weeks after the initial iPhone release. And here's the kicker. What is arguably the biggest change of all, Siri 2.0 with natural language processing isn't going to be ready this year at all, and instead is now announced for spring 2025, which would suggest that it's iOS 18.4 or 18.5, which is around half the life of the iPhone 16 Pro. This is not a good look, and if this is true, it would potentially make this Apple's worst iPhone launch ever. And even Apple fanboys like this guy may not upgrade if this does hold true. So what could Apple do to prove this prediction wrong? Because let's be honest, this doesn't sound very much like Apple. These guys know what they're doing. So instead of doomsdaying this upcoming iPhone release, a better question to ask is, what are Apple's actual plans? And will they make enough of an impact to make this worth the upgrade? Well, based on my research, there are exactly two things that I can see Apple do. And in an ideal world, they do both of them. So as I mentioned earlier, the 0.1 release of iOS, so for example 18.1, usually comes 4 to 6 weeks after the release of the iPhone. This has been the case since forever. The iPhone 15, for example, released on September 18th. And the next minor release of iOS came a full 37 days later on October 25th. The iPhone 14, 13 and 12 had the same release schedule with 42, 35 and 34 days respectively, but here's the thing. The iPhone 11 was different. Just like every other iPhone, in September of every year, specifically September 19th, 2019, Apple released the iPhone 11 lineup with iOS 13. So far, nothing out of the ordinary, except for a little difference. iOS 13.1 didn't take 4 or 6 weeks to release. It took just 5 days and it included a bunch of bug fixes as well as some additional features. And Apple did this because they obviously need time or a cutoff date to put the most stable version of iOS onto all the iPhones before they ship them out to us. And Apple might just need that extra week or two to finalize Apple Intelligence enough for them to feel confident enough for us to actually use it. And that could mean that iOS 18.1 could also release just a few days after the iPhone 16 Pro launch. And while that wouldn't solve the lack of Siri 2.0, it would at least give us a lot of the Apple Intelligence features, some of which may actually be worth the upgrade. And speaking of, features are where this next iPhone may make the biggest difference. Because, let's be honest, neither Apple nor any of the big phone makers these days is afraid of locking software features to the newest models, even if they later bring them down to their older generations. So while the Apple Intelligence that was introduced to us earlier this year may have been incredibly impressive, there's absolutely no reason to believe that Apple revealed all their cards, and instead has a bunch of features up their sleeve exclusively to the iPhone 16 Pro lineup. Just as an example, look at what Google just did with their Pixel 9 lineup. They added so many AI features, and most of them, if not all of them, are literally only available on the Pixel 9. One of these features is called Add Me, and it's kind of crazy because it allows groups to take photos of the entire group without a tripod or asking a stranger to take a photo of them, and yet all of the people are right inside the photo. This stuff is insane, and Apple might just have some similar things up their sleeve. So between you and me, listen, I'm a tech YouTuber with a focus on Apple. Obviously, I'm gonna get the new iPhone, right? To review it and make videos just like this. But I have also tested Apple Intelligence, and without Siri, I don't think it is worth the upgrade for most people. But we'll see in just a month if Apple can surprise us with some software features that will just blow us away. And until then, nothing but the best. Peace. Nothing but the best. What the